What's up, guys? This is Corey with the Dirt City Gym, and today we are back with another deck profile. So today we're going to be looking at getting into set 3, and the first leader I really wanted to get into from set 3 is Broly. So from everyone that's been around since set 1, everyone's pretty familiar with Broly. Broly never really did or got results, but it got a lot of hype, especially in set 1. But again, unfortunately, it's never really done overly well. Recently, we've had some Brolys do kind of well, whether it be at the states, ARG states, or the ARG regionals we've had recently. I don't know if we've had any that made it into top cut as far as like the regionals and everything, but I know we've had a few that have done well in day 1 and things like that. Broly's one of those leaders. In set 1, I wasn't overly fond of it. I just was something I'm just not super fond of in general playing. But I think in set 3 it gets a lot of new tools to play in this little toolbox, and I think it makes it really an interesting deck. So let's go ahead and get right into the deck list. So obviously first up we've got Broly. Everyone pretty much knows what he does, but whenever he attacks leader card, or he can only attack leader cards, and whenever he attacks, both players have to discard a card from your hand. Normally that's not great for you, but we have Broly's Ring, which lets us kind of bypass that. We only have to have our opponent discard cards, so that works out really well. And then over on its Awaken side, whenever he attacks, both player discard a card, and both player remove 1 card from their battle area to the discard. We also have ways to get around that in the deck, which is what we got introduced with set 3, which I think is what kind of makes the deck really interesting. So with Broly's Ring and with the cards that we have no negative side effect on our end from attacking with Broly. Moving into the deck list, so first up we've got 3 Time Patrol Trunks. He's just our normal Overwhelm guy. Put him into play, look the top 2 cards, +1, put 1 at the bottom or 1 on the top. I think it's a pretty standard inclusion in majority of decks. Depending on how you're playing with the Broly, whether you get the ring or not early, you're going to be pitching cards whenever you're attacking, so you're not ever really worried about discarding those cards, because then you can just Time Patrol Trunks, use the Overwhelm, and take advantage of that. So it's a pretty strong card there. We very rarely will attack with him, but he's that 15k option if we ever need it. Next up, we've got Endless Evolution Broly. So he's a 3-drop, 2 green, 15k attacker. Whenever he comes into play, you kill one of your opponent's battle cards. And then he has the permanent cards that evolve off of this Broly. You reduce their cost by 2 green. So basically, if a card that you're evolving from costs 3 green and 1 other, it's only going to cost 1 green and 1 other to evolve of him. So he's a really, really strong card. Unfortunately, this is a promo card, so this is going to be one of those kind of cards. It's going to be a little bit harder to get earlier in the set once the set releases, but as we get going, it's definitely going to be one of those cards to look out for. He is a 15k attacker, which isn't bad in of itself. He's a 0 cost 5k combo, which is pretty good too. All right, next up, we've got 2 of the Broly the Rampaging Horror. He is our 6-drop. 4 green, and then he evolves for 4 green and 1 other. If we're evolving off of an Endless Evolution Broly, they only cost 2 green and 1 other, so we're evolving into the 6-drop for 3, which is pretty great. And then whenever he comes into play, your opponent randomly chooses 2 cards from their hand, and they get discarded. So again, kind of working with that hand destruction theme. He's also a 30k double striker, which is pretty nice as well. Next up, we've got 2 Rampaging Lifeform Bio Broly. He's a 5-drop, 2 green. He evolves for 2 green and 2 other, kind of the same thing. If you're evolving off the Endless Evolution Broly, he only evolves for 2 colorless, which is pretty nice. But whenever he comes in, whenever you evolve into him, your opponent has to discard 2 cards from their hand. So again, the whole Broly package in and of itself is working with hand destruction. He's a 20k double striker as well. Next up, we've got 4 Hidden Awakening Kale. She costs 4, 2 green. She has critical, which is great. It works really well with that hand destruction theme. Whenever we're attacking, they're not gaining cards from their life. Whenever she comes into play, you discard one of your battle cards, and then you wipe your opponent from up to 5 cost or less. So very strong. We have ways to get this girl out like super early, which is super helpful. And then whenever she attacks, if you have 5 or less cards in your hand, you draw a card. So she's just all around a really well-balanced card. Next up, we've got 4 Broly, the Unstoppable Horror. He is a 4-drop, 2 green. He evolves for 2 green, 1 other. Obviously, if we're evolving from the Endless, he only costs 1 colorless. He has Double Strike, 15k attack, and then he has the auto whenever he comes into play. Whenever you evolve from him into him, you kill a card. So really strong stuff. Next up, we've got 2 Marshal Expert Tien Shinhan. So he is our Self-Awakening Kappa card. He is a 3 cost, 2 green. Whenever we can combo with him for 2, and he comes into play as long as our leader is green in active mode. And then he's got the auto. Take a life, discard, just put 1 life in your discard, take 1 life in your hand, kill a card. And then you can do this as many turns as you want. So if you get to a situation like on turn 2 where you can just drop him, Then you can go all the way down to 4, Awaken, take 2 cards, kill 2 guys on the field. You have a lot of versatility with this card. Obviously, he's not as useful later in the game because you don't want to be taking that life, and he's still something you want to watch out for, taking that life super early. If they ever get in a situation where they knock you down to like 7 and kind of leave you there, which is a common strategy against like Broly or green decks in general, then you're got to be very careful if you decide to pop off with the TN, because then you'll go down all the way to 3 in order to awaken as opposed to 4. So something to pay attention to. That's why we only run 2. Hopefully you won't ever really need more than that. All right, next up we've got 3 Unstoppable Ambition Super Saiyan Caulifla. So she's a 2-cost, 2 green. She is the permanent. Your card does not go in the battle area due to your skills, and then your card does not get KO'd due to your skills. So this is how we get around whenever we attack with our Broly, discarding our cards off the Awakened side. This prevents us from having to discard cards off of Kale and all that kind of stuff. She also has the auto whenever she comes into play, take a life and put it in your hand. So another good card that helps us self-awaken pretty quickly. And she's a 20k attacker for 2, which is really strong in itself. And then we have ways to get her out super cheap as well. She's really strong. She kind of protects all of your cards from Broly, really, of himself. You have to watch out because she does not have barrier or anything like that herself. So she's pretty much of an easy. She's a pretty easy target. Son Goten can kill her. Kales can kill her. Beerus can kill her. Gohan can kill her. Excuse me, any of that kind of stuff. So definitely something to watch out for there. Next up, we have 4 Trunks Protector of Children. This is just our super combo. We ran this over the green super combo because that requires us to be a green android to get the full effect. So this is probably fine. If you really wanted, you could also run the black super combo. You just have to make sure you're getting cards in your warp quickly in order to really get that into effect. Alright, next up we have 3 Saiyan Teamwork Kaba. So he is a 2-drop, 2 green, 10k attacker. Whenever he comes into play, or he is a permanent, all of your Kales and Cauliflas cost 1 less to play, and that counts for specified costs as well. So if you've got one of these in a play, Caulifla costs 1, Kale costs 3. 2 of these in a play, Cauliflas are free, Kales cost 2. Really strong stuff. Then he's got the auto whenever he comes into play. Look at the top 10 cards of your deck. You may choose either a Kale or Caulifla you find there. If it's a Kale, you put it in your hand. If it's a Caulifla, you may put it into play. You may put it in your hand too if you want, but you may put it into play. So this is on turn 2, getting on a Caulifla, taking a life, and reducing our costs and everything like that. And then it's getting that protection across the board. So really strong card. Next up, we've got Paragus, Controller of Monsters. So he's a 2-drop, 1 green, auto whenever he comes into play. You may discard a card from your hand if you do find a Broly's Ring from your deck and then put it into play. So this is just kind of our insurance policy if we cannot open with a Broly's Ring in our hand or get it just naturally off a couple draws. Ideally, we don't really want to run more of these than we have to, because once we get 1 Broly's Ring into play, that's pretty much all we need. But we have 2, like I said, just kind of as an insurance policy. Next up, we have 3 Bundle of Curiosity Son Goku. He's a 2-drop, 1 green. Whenever he comes into play, draw a card. This is just kind of cycling through our deck. We're only running 3 of these because we have a lot of other 2-drops that are probably more important depending on situationally when you're playing them, whether it would be Kaba or Caulifla or even Paragus to go get your ring. So there's a lot of different options there at that 2-drop slot. That's why we ended up only running 3. Next up, we have 4 Broly Dawn of the Rampage. He's a 1-cost, 1 green. Auto whenever he comes into play. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. Put 1 Broly you find there into your hand. So he's just our tutor card for Broly. We can go get him. We can go get any of our Evolution Brolys or Bio Brolys. So it's really strong. You have to kind of be careful because once people start seeing Broly come down on the field, he's kind of a target for Gotens and Kales and things like that. So sometimes it's not a bad idea to save at least 1 in your hand until later in the game whenever you can cast it and then evolve off of it right away and kind of get those effects. Next up, we've got 3 Broly's Ring. So again, this is just the card that protects us from discarding cards from our own Broly. We only run 3. I feel like 4 is a little overkill. I mean, obviously, if you feel like you're just not ever getting the rings consistently enough, you can increase that to 3 or to 4. But I feel like 3 is probably the safe number. I've seen a lot of lists that run 2. That's kind of greedy to me, only to run 2. So I feel like I said 3 is a pretty safe number. Next up, we have Time's Judgment. So this is our negate. I went with Time's Judgment over Full Power Energy just because Full Power Energy we're not really gaining a lot of. It kills a battle card with like energy cost of 1 or less, which in some decks is fine, but we're not, like I said, we're not really gaining much out of that with Broly. We already have a ton of board wipe in Broly in and of itself, so I didn't feel like there was a lot of advantage of that. Whereas in Time's Judgment, you can cast it for any color because it's a black card. And then if you pitch 2 cards from your hand, you can put the Time's Judgment back in your hand and then use it again later. So that is something that I just feel like, while we're probably not going to use it super often, it's definitely an option that gives us a lot of value. If you feel like it's near the end of the game, you just need to survive a turn and you win next turn, being able to just chain Time's Judgment is really strong. So just from a value perspective, I feel like it offered us more value over the full power energy. All right, next up we have 3 Relentless Destruction Mirror. So this is another black card. He has an Overwhelm 3. He's a 3 cost, and then whenever he comes into play using Overwhelm, your opponent discards a card. So this again is just really working with our hand destruction combination that we're running with majority of the deck. It's a very strong card. Getting the 3 into the Overwhelm really is not much of a problem. And then just forcing your opponent to discard cards whenever they don't want to, and you're not having to attack, is really strong in and of itself. He's a 15k attacker too, which isn't something to look away from. And then finally, we have 2 Overflowing Bio Warrior Army. So this is a 2-drop 2 green. He's got the auto whenever this card leaves the battle area, or is put in the drop area, excuse me. You may discard a card from your hand and then put him back into play in active mode. So originally when I was building the deck, I tried it without Bio Warrior and just going with the Caulifla package. But like I said, I found out pretty quickly that there's so much board destruction running around a majority of decks that I wasn't getting a lot of value out of Caulifla. Because people were just able to goten her away, kale her away, and all that kind of stuff. So long term, short term, I felt like putting 2 Bio Warrior wasn't bad. It kind of covers you from that. Also, late game, you don't really want to have to drop Cauliflas, because every time you drop one, you have to take a life. And so late game, that kind of gets into a weird spot where people start targeting the Cauliflas, because they know if you play it, you're going to have to take a life, and it's just going to kind of wear you out before too long. So I felt like 2 Bio Warriors was a pretty good compromise in there to make sure even late game we have that option where we're not really discarding a lot of our resources in order to keep our Broly thing going. So all in all, that is the deck, guys. I'm not going to cover sideboard here. I'm still working on a sideboard as we're still kind of getting used to the meta and everything like that. You can kind of incorporate more things in the sideboard. Options for the sideboard, maybe more Overwhelm cards. You know, Mira is not bad at all. The Crit Mira, things like that. There's a lot of different options that you can run and kind of cycle things out. If you feel like you're playing against a lot of board control, you can kind of probably pull out the Cauliflas or any kind of combination of things like that. So there's a lot of different options that you can run. Another option you can go with the deck as opposed to the Broly package, which we're running here, is more of the Android focused package. So you've got the Dreadful Duo 17 and 18 that have crit, which are pretty nice. And you've got a bunch of the like 3-drop 15, 4-drop 15, where your opponent has to discard a card whenever it comes into play. I wasn't crazy about those, but that's definitely another option you can take with the deck if you so choose. Definitely something to play around with though. But other than that, guys, let me know what you think about Broly down below. What are y'all looking forward to as far as leaders and decks and everything for set 3 and all that good stuff? And we will see y'all next time.